Hi, hello everybody. Welcome to my channel. And like I always say, this is a channel for amateurs, people who are not really professionals, but who want to gain more of chess understanding, because chess is a game that requires a lot of understanding to be able to, play well, improve, and develop. So, this is a channel for amateurs where amateurs can comment on videos and try to improve each other with suggestions that are always welcome. So, to go straight to the point, the reason for this video is to explain the idea of the center and the control of the center in chess. And this is something that I struggled with for so many years, being an amateur myself. If I was rated, I'll probably be rated maybe 1700 FIDE. And I've always struggled with the meaning of what it meant to control the center. And I know that a lot of people who are starting to play chess, who are not professionals, who just want to play with their friends and families and enjoy a good game, may also be struggling with this idea of the center, of controlling the center of the board. So I'm creating this video to share my knowledge, my understanding, and I welcome comments underneath the video and subscription to this channel to get more of such videos where I try to explain what I've learned in my years of playing leisure chess. So these four squares on the chessboard is majorly the center of the board, right? And these neighboring squares that encloses these four squares is also like the outer center or the extended center. So where you have my hand, all these squares, why is it so important in the game of chess? So this is something that I have struggled with, like I said, for a very long time, and I want to share what I found out. So, first and foremost, what we've talked about the center. The question is, what does it mean to control the center? So let's break this down. The center, like I said, is made up of squares, right? So to control the center, you have to control the squares. And how do you control a square? Another word that I struggled with in chess literature and understanding and the books that I've read, I'll make another video on books that I think can improve your chess understanding. What I've struggled with, the word control. People use that word, oh, it's controlling that square. I'm like, what does it mean to control a square? Now, this is what I found out that it means to control a square. When you simultaneously attack and defend a square, that means you're controlling the square. So take for instance this pawn. If this pawn is in the center of the board, in one of the core center squares, this pawn simultaneously attacks these two squares. In other words, if an enemy piece lands on this square, the pawn can capture it, or this square. Another thing that you need to also understand, which I will also talk about in later videos, depending on if you guys subscribe and you like topics like this, is that the game of chess is all about squares, mostly. Because attacking this square determines if you lose a piece or not. Like if your opponent puts this piece there. So it's about the square and secondarily about what sits on it. I'll talk about more in other videos. Now back to the topic of controlling the square. So we just talked about controlling the square. I talked about simultaneously attacking and defending. I just showed the idea of simultaneously attacking, and this is the idea of simultaneously defending. In other words, you are able to place your own piece there without a loss. and another video about strategy, which is outposts for knights in chess. I can also talk about that in other videos. Is this is an outpost where you have a support point for your knight and you have a pawn that defends it. So this is an example of defending a square and at the same time attacking a square. That means that you are controlling the square. Now, the more of your pieces that you have trained towards a square, as long as you have pieces that are equal or higher in number to your opponent's pieces trained towards a square, you probably have control or equal control of that square. So now we've talked about what the center of the board means. We've talked about what controlling the center means. Now, why do you control the center? So this is an enemy piece, right? Now I'm putting a very simplified scenario here. Ideally you have kings on the board, but just to make sure we focus on the concept here. Ideally, so if you were going to attack this rook on this square, for example, right? Let's take the bishop. If the bishop was going to attack this rook, this bishop can move one square diagonally, and now it's attacking the rook. One of the things that I just talked about, the idea of chess being about squares. One of the things that we forget is that even though bishops can move, they are long range pieces, they can move in one sweep across the board, technically they kind of move like this, although it's not shown on the board, but they kind of move that way. So in other words, for this, if you look at it that way, for this bishop to be able to capture this rook, these squares, remember the center squares, need not be blocked by the opponent's pieces, and this bishop must make sure that at least it has control of these squares, or other supporting pieces also have control of these squares, so that the bishop can easily go pick up the rook. So that's one of the reasons why having control of the center helps your pieces. Now, assuming that black had pawns on this square, for example, two black pawns on this square, this bishop would not be able to attack the rook because the opponent is controlling the square. Let's take a look at the knight, for example. If the knight were to attack this rook, the knight would probably move this way, this way, this way, and then attack the rook, right? What do you notice about the knight here? The knight is in the center of the board. So, controlling the square it gives your pieces the ability to stay safely on the central square and prevent your opponent from doing the same. Imagine if black had a pawn on this square. Then white's knight would not have safely been able to land on this square. In other words, black would have been controlling this square with his pawn. 1 second, let me get a pawn so it's easier to demonstrate this. Yes, I'm back with a black pawn. So imagine that black had a pawn in the center that's controlling this square. This journey would not have been easy for the knight to make. The knight would have had to find alternate routes which would be longer and probably take more time to be able to capture the rook. So this is why it's important that you have your pieces controlling the square. Remember when we talked about the bishop? This is a roadblock. Imagine if the pawn is also defended, the bishop cannot. So this is why the idea of controlling the center is very key and important. If I was going to use this pawn to challenge this rook, if black has a pawn here, again, remember, controlling squares, this pawn can also be stopped in its tracks while it intends to go capture this rook. So this is the idea in chess about controlling the center. So I hope this helps those people out there who are struggling with the idea of what does it mean when you say you're controlling squares or you're controlling the center in the game of chess. Now this is part of the things you do in the opening, so I'm going to make another video about the things you need to do in the opening. As an amateur, I personally do not believe that you need to memorize a lot of opening moves and opening theories. I don't think you need that. I would make a video to explain why I think that is so, and when you may want to do that, maybe at the highest level of chess, but not necessarily at this level. So once again, thank you for watching this, for taking your time. I hope you've learned something, and my goal is to make more videos that explain these concepts in chess as I learn them as an amateur. And I hope that you will subscribe to this channel and share comments and advice and suggestions that will help fellow amateurs like ourselves to learn chess better. Thank you very much.